Hello and welcome to Impulse Talks, coming to you live from Paris. We are about 40 participants, so it's time to start. I am Thomas Ledurand. I'm very happy to present this fourth edition of this series of webinars on digital construction. Our ambition is to provide an international overview on how tech is developing in construction. And each month we are featuring some of the best startup companies, along with testimonies from industry leaders and perspectives from venture capital investors. Coming up today, we'll hear from the UK. Bouygues describe its approach with startup companies. 4 entrepreneurs from the UK, Israel, Norway and Spain will then pitch their innovations. Also ahead from the UK, Mott MacDonald Ventures will share its perspectives on opportunities for digital ventures in the construction sector. We will have at the end of the talk a few minutes for Q&A. Please use the chat to type in your questions. For your information, this session is being recorded. We have about 120 participants who registered for this session, industry leaders in materials, engineering, contractors, real estate and venture capital firms. Thank you all for participating, and this demonstrates a strong interest for this topic. Before introducing our speakers for today, a few words about Impulse Partners. We are passionate about innovation in construction, convinced that there is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs to help reshape the construction industry and to improve efficiency and sustainability. Our role is to help detect the most promising tech companies and to connect them with the market. We act as a facilitator between industry players, startup companies, and investors. We work with many of the largest names and industry leaders in our focus sectors, and more than 1,000 startup companies that we have helped accelerate their go-to-market. Part of our job is to bring people together across the value chain and across geographies to evaluate and share experiences. This is exactly what we will be doing today through this talk. As you know, digital construction can be in many ways a buzzword. We have listed here some of the innovations and new uses that we believe can make a strong impact on the industry. I'm not going to detail that slide. We will be illustrating today some of those innovations, and in the following sessions, some more of those innovations. A quick note to thank our partners who helped distribute the information about today's talk. Also, please take a few minutes at the end of the session to give us feedback so that we can improve what we do. And that's it. I'm now ready to introduce our first speakers for today, Aurélie and Nicolas from Bouygues UK. They will present their activities and their digital transformation plan. Aurélie, Nicolas, it's yours.
Thank you. Okay, so nice to meet you. I'm Aurélie Marais. I'm in charge of digital transformation and innovation for Bouygues Construction in the UK. And maybe before going in more detail in our digital transformation plan and what we do here in the UK, I'd like just to introduce our company. So Bouygues Construction, if we can go directly to the next slide, it's an international leader in sustainable construction. If we go to the next slide, we will see that we have 60,000 employees over the world, 4,000 just here in the UK. And we deliver a very diversified projects. So it's on the next slide. We are well known for our big project, but we also deliver smaller projects in 60 countries and basically in 3 areas of activities: buildings, civil works, and energies and services. If we go to the next slides, you will see that we operate throughout the entire value chain of a construction. And this whole value chain is impacted, of course, by digital. So, of course, property management, financial engineering, use analysis to make sure that we integrate that to make the best design and to deliver the best construction assets. We maintain and we operate them, and we provide also a lot of users services, and we can go up to deconstruction. So if I now focus or give you more a very high-level overview of our digital transformation journey. If we go to the next slide, please, we've got a program, a dedicated program at a company level, international level. It's called Digital, and it tells you a lot about our ambition, which is to really embark everyone in this huge and massive journey. Of course, our employees, but also our ecosystem, our supply chain, because we know that we need everyone to really achieve this transformation. So I try to summarize in one slide the main bricks, I would say, of this systemic plan, because it's not simple. You need to activate a lot of things to make sure that we will transform our business. So if you look at the left side of the slides, you've got a few mega trends that impact today a lot the world, more than just our business, but that are very relevant for our business. And it's what is pushing us to transform ourselves. First, the demographic change and the urbanization, of course, the climate change, the resource scarcity, the technological acceleration, also the changing user behaviors, and of course the value chain shifting and all the market shifts we can see today. So that is what's pushing us, and what is pulling us, I would say, what is driving us is our vision, which is make people's life better every day. So what do we want to deliver with digital? And I'm sorry, but I will start by the bottom purple topic, which is augmented value proposition. We want to deliver to our clients and to the society smarter and more sustainable solutions and services for infrastructure, buildings, and industry. And we use digital to augment our value proposition. But it's also the way we deliver this solution that is very deeply transforming today. And it's all about improving our business excellence at the top of the slide. What we want to do is really to improve our safety, our productivity, our quality, and using digital as a tool to do that. Our ambition here is really to integrate virtual twin experiences to manage projects from A to Z. And we are working to move from a traditional document system in which different disciplines work in silos or independently to a real 3D model-based method where we can work collaboratively or around a single source of data that will streamline the decision-making all across the projects, from general management to site workers. And we already, it won't happen overnight, of course, we do already a lot to bring digital progressively on sites. Nicolas will tell you more about that. I spoke about our internal transformation, our offer transformation, but it's also about our clients and partners' experience, and that's quite new for us. But we include that in our transformation and do a lot of progress to that respect. How we can achieve these three priorities? First, we have a few enablers: improve our IT efficiency, of course, put in place the right governance, because we had more than 350 digital initiatives across the group. So we need to be well organized and coordinated to make the most of it. And we do a lot of efforts in terms of change management, because again, it's not all about digital, it's about people embracing these new ways of working, and we need to help them. In our action plan, mainly three pillars: the culture, and these pillars are really transversal and helped us to tackle the three priorities. The culture and the skills. We need to empower people with digital skills and digital cultures. We do a lot in terms of reverse digital mentoring, for example. We train more than 1,000 people this year on using better Office 365 tools. So this is the kind of things we are doing to upskill our staff. Shared innovation, of course, we need to really make the most of our own ecosystem, and we work internally but also with external partners. So we have 3 main programs: employee-led innovation, more focused on continuous improvement; open innovation to really embark more disruptive solution; and R&D acceleration on major projects. And last but not least, the data. How do we turn our data into an asset and in order to embrace very quickly the potential of AI? That's our plan. I will now hand over to Nicolas, who will go in a more practical example. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurélie. So how does it translate in the UK? And I was nominated as Head of Innovation for Bouygues UK a bit more 3 years ago, and it's been a journey since then. I was a bit alone, and if you can skip a few slides forward to the meeting people. I met a lot of people and I became a yes man, and that's the sort of idea. I don't expect you to read that, but that's to show you the number of people I have met as a side job as Head of Innovation for Bouygues UK. And it's helping to understand what's happening out there and understanding how it could fit our business. But then after, I was not able to deliver to the team internally what was out there. So next slide. It's about organizing what exists, and I created a map for myself, and every organization should have a different map because they might have different ways to operate and these sort of things. But it's to show you there's sort of some organization behind that. And one of the fields is capture and visualization. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that you go into a level of granulometry where I try to organize the different solutions. So I understand the tech, and that helps me to propose the best solution when people come to me with a pain point. But then after, next one, it's about connecting the dots and how do you bridge between the outside world and the corporate. And next slide, you'll see it's, for instance, we've organized some startup breakfast meeting in the business where startups come and pitch a bit like today, so people can discover the solutions, and it helps people broadening their view of what can be a solution. So a couple of success story just now. Next step is to show you, and that hope that will resonate to investors, startups, and corporate. But it's to an average journey. It's nearly 2 years from the identification of a solution to some full progress. An example here is a solution we met in summer 2018, did the first test, and then feedback session at the end of a year after, where we pull everything apart, try to understand the added value, what it brings, what it didn't bring. It was not really exactly what we want, so we tried another solution. And then this summer, we thought like, okay, that's working really well. So company decision, let's move with that as a base, the minimum for each of our projects. And it's thinking about the lessons learned. It's the unexpected value. It's what we see as a value in the solution today is not what some were seeing 2 years ago when I pitched the first time. So it's interesting to go and find the value where it's not obvious at first time. And the second one is it's keep calm and keep searching. It's like the first solution was not right, but that doesn't mean that we need to ditch everything. It maybe there's something slightly different, but doing sort of the same thing that could be a fit for us, and that was a good one. The next one, next slide, is another example. It's same time I met someone, I pitched with them on different projects, and nobody wanted them, but finally we had one test, and the feedback is positive, and we can start drilling into what data is generating for us, and we can understand some behaviors and patterns on site that actually we were not paying attention to, but dashboards and digitalization can help us to understand that better. So same again, it's like it took nearly 2 years from when we met the solution to thinking, oh yes, we need to use that more. And it's to show that a startup in the construction industry, will probably be a startup longer than it is in the digital world in like other techs. Failure with early adoption is not a problem because there are other opportunities to give a try, and it's keeping trying to find what is the added value so that the business can learn from it. I hope it made sense, and maybe there will be some questions later, but here it is for me.
Thank you very much, Nicolas and Aurélie, for sharing the plan and the approach and the progress. It's an excellent illustration of how difficult it is to make both world match, startup world and construction world. And thank you for this testimony of your actions to make it match. Next speaker for today, Phil White from the UK. Phil, please log in and show your camera if you can, to present Cloud Cycle, a digital solution for matching concrete supply and demand, reducing cost and CO2 emissions. Hi, Phil.
Hi there, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I'm Philip White and I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Cycle. What I thought I'd do today is run through our case study of our work that we're doing with HS2, which is currently Europe's largest infrastructure project in the UK here. So for some context, HS2 will use enough concrete to fill Wembley Stadium 3 times over from the bottom to the top. And we know that, speaking with industry, about 5% of all concrete is wasted. So next slide, please. We're going to help HS2 avoid wasting 420,000 tons of concrete. And next slide. We're going to help them save around £25 million in the process. That's just for phase 1 alone, and there's 3 phases. Next slide, please. We're going to help them reduce 50 million kilograms of CO2 from their project's budget. Next slide. And we're going to help them save 2.6 million litres. And what's the problem we're talking about? Why does this occur? So ready-mix concrete is the second most used material on the planet, and it's used everywhere. It's ubiquitous. We waste 5% of it in construction, and that's a huge number when you consider it globally. And what happens is the concrete goes into the back of the truck, perfectly good, and often it arrives at a contract site and it's out of specification. So the construction company has to turn it away. That's a huge cost to the concrete provider, and it's really bad for the environment. And it's just a cost and a time, and no one wants to deal with that. The other part that the concrete waste occurs is when you're an engineer and you're building a project, you always need to over-order concrete, because if you don't have enough to pour the pour that you're currently doing, you might have to basically break the hole up and rip it out and start all over again, which is a huge cost and lots of waste attached to it. And also, if we think about the building process, we have BIM, which is amazing digitization of the design process. So we know how much concrete should be in the design. We have procurement processes which tell us how much has been ordered, but currently we have no idea, no way of telling how much concrete has actually been used on the project, because it just disappears. It's either wasted or poured into holes, and this is because of the mismanagement and because of the lack of transparency around the visibility of concrete. So I'll go into the solution now. Next slide, please. What we do, HS2 set as a circular economy challenge, and I'll just move through the principles and processes, but essentially what we do, we install off-the-shelf sensors that collect data from the concrete truck, and we effectively turn the concrete truck into a rheometer to measure the quality of the material at all times. And this then feeds to our cloud box, where we use machine learning to constantly monitor and predict the quality of the concrete, giving full transparency and full digital sign-off upon quality upon delivery. And if we move on to the next slide, please. This is a bit of an idea of our box. It's about the size of our hand. We are currently working with CEMEX, and yeah, so we believe in very smart back end and a very lightweight front end in terms of our technology. So very little hardware that just enables the back end software to do its work. And next slide, please. And we also give projects and companies a holistic view of the concrete, which trucks are within spec, which ones are without spec, how much concrete you've saved, how much carbon you've used today, and you can track all that in one place. So the reporting is real time, so you can intervene and do whatever you need to in the operations. And next slide, please. So we're sticking to the circular economy principles, and principle 1 is keep resources in use for as long as possible. And we do that by, if we go to the next slide, we do that by condition monitoring. This is a tech on the truck that's constantly monitoring the quality of the concrete and predicting if it will be within spec when it arrives on site. If it's not going to be within spec, we offer really early interventions such as add water or add admixture to stop the waste occurring in the first place. And then if we move to the next slide, please. Principle 2 is we've done our smarts and we still have waste because of this over-ordering issue. So what do we do with the concrete then? And if we move to the next slide, we've developed an app-based marketplace for surplus concrete. So on HS2, if one site has surplus on their site, on their project site, we can very easily match it to other sites within the project. So we're keeping the concrete at its highest value use case while it's still wet, going into permanent works that are actually building the project. So it's losing very little value. And if we go on to the next slide. The next use case is recover and generate resources at the end of each use if possible. And if we go to the next slide, on HS2, we're doing in surplus into precast molds. So it's not going into temporary works, but next slide, please. It can go into things like Lego box, jersey barriers. On long projects, these will be used for temporary works on the project, and this is still better than being recycled or going to landfill. And then if you look at the next slide. Our subscription model is very simple. It's a subscription model. The hardware is all free, the installation's free, and whoever is using our platform just pays for the subscription, the hardware, and the value that they get, and it gives them full control over the concrete in any project. Whether you're a concrete company, contractor, or a client, you will have value from this data. And next slide, please. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. Great timing. We will leave the questions, if any, to the end. Please let me welcome Guy. Hi, Guy. Are you here? Can you switch your microphone and camera on? Guy will present LightYX. It's an Israeli company that helps visualize blueprints to workers on the field using a laser. Guy, are you here? I don't hear you. It seems you are connected. Is your microphone on? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Just now, yes.
Okay, so now can you hear me? Okay, sorry. So my name is Guy Ben Romano. Thank you, Thomas. And I'm one of the co-founder and CEO of LightYX. Next slide, please. So what we do in LightYX, our mission is to empower construction workers. We want to allow them to build fast and right the first time. Next slide, please. I will tell you a little bit about our company. It was founded 2 years ago by 3 friends, which are electronics engineers. We have a team of 7 engineers. Each one of them is graduated, studies with honors, and has worked for very leading companies. We already raised $2.7 million, including grants, and concluded strategic partnership in a very short time. We won many prizes during the last 2 years because of our innovation ID. However, you are probably anxious to know what we are doing, so I will skip to the next slide, and then we'll show a demo. So I would be delighted to, if you click this slide, we'll hear it. I can't hear it. If you hear the music, I don't know.
No, we don't. Let us make another try for the music.
Okay. Yes.
We are living in a world where building information modeling has become vital to today's construction projects. Problem is, BIM coordination efforts often get lost in translation as soon as building starts, which can lead to cost and schedule overruns. That's where Lytx comes in. We created a robotic system called the Lytx Beamer 1. It's all about building right and building fast the first time. All you have to do is follow these 3 steps. Download the plan to your mobile. Position the Lytx Beamer 1 robotic system using 3 reference points, or a reference element. Choose the layout you want to project and start working. It's an APR technology that projects an adaptive projective reality of any 2 or 3D blueprints onto the construction surface itself with an accurate laser down to the millimeters. This way, construction workers can easily see the blueprints to scale without having to mark the work surface themselves. This means many day-to-day mistakes can be avoided. But there's more. Lytx's Beamer 1 can also detect mismatches between the BIM model and the as-built. The operator can then modify the projection on site by moving elements around on the app. All they need to do now is save the updated version and send it back to the architect for approval. Lytx's innovation has become the answer for issues that arise day-to-day on construction sites. Building right and building fast. That's how we like to do it with the Beamer 1.
And next slide, please. Okay, so maybe the last slide. So the use cases that we are focusing in is mainly mechanical installation, electrical installation, plumbing installation, and of course frame drywalls installation, like framing tracks, etc. Next slide, please. And that's what Lytx is doing. And then thank you very much for your time and listening.
Thank you, Guy. Always a pleasure. Please stay with us for the questions at the end.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Let me now call Maximilian Trommer from Norway that will present us Rebar Tech, a solution that uses robots to prefabricate rebar cages and integrate them with the structural design software. Maximilian, please turn on camera and microphone.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and I can now see you. Hi. Go ahead.
Okay. So Rebar Tech is a robotic construction startup from Norway. And next slide, please. In the construction industry, you all are well aware of we have had very low productivity for the last 20 years. And in the manufacturing industry, next, if you look at the image, you can see it's automated, it's robotic, and especially it's mass production of the same product over and over again. Next slide, please. This is what construction industry looks like. It's manual labor. It's hard, dangerous manual labor. And every project still is a one-off. So if you look at this guy here, he's bending over and he's breaking his back, and he's working with rebar, concrete steel reinforcement, and it's everywhere around us. If you click next, it's a 160 billion euro industry globally, and like a huge construction project uses up to 30 million euros just on rebar. And it's a lot of manual labor, and we have a robotic solution for this, and that is two parts. If you go to the next slide, you see that the first part of our solution is a mobile factory that we bring onto the construction site for automated prefabrication. So instead of installing every rebar one by one by hand directly into the formwork, we use a prefabrication method where the robot assembles the rebars and welds them together. And what we see is that if this factory is fully utilized on a construction site, it can save up to 2 million euros in labor and materials. Next slide, please. The other part of our solution is the integrated design software. What we're seeing in our project is that if you have some PDF drawings and you want to make the rebar with the robot, you have a big problem, and we spend a lot of time programming the robot. So what we actually have to do is already in the design phase, use our software. We have a catalog of different rebar cages that you can adjust with parametric design to your project. And this software is smart enough that already here you can save up to 20% of the material, and and you can then automatically transfer the instructions to the robot. So yeah, and these you are dependent or to already think about this in the design phase to get a new good solution. Next slide, please. We are 20% optimization now, and what we see in the research, if this is from ETH in Zurich, you can save actually up to 70% of the material, depending, of course, what reference you take. But a lot of the concrete we are casting today is just there because it's faster to make something square than to make an optimized shape. Next slide. And yeah, just one more point for the last point is that last slide is that we enable this with our technology. Here's how we scale our solution is that we have on the right-hand side a network of decentralized mobile factories. Then next, please, on the left-hand side, you have our design software and our catalog of different rebar cages that the customer can adjust to their project. And then next, please, in the middle, we are sitting in our mission control room and operate this remotely. Next slide, please. So we have our prototype in operation here in Norway. Right now it's stationary inside the factory, but we're making real rebar cages for real customers here in Norway. Next slide, please. So far, we have delivered 12 projects for customers here, both for housing projects. On the left side, you can see stairs, landings, pillars. And on the right-hand side, you see a delivery of something that we have done for a bridge project. Next slide, please. I'm waiting on my screen here to see the slide. Okay. So I want to show like two more applications that we think are really good for our solution. Right now, we are working on a tunnel project where you also see here our approach is that we are not 100% automated and robotic right now. So it's a combination of human labor and robotic labor. And tunnel projects for TBM projects is really something that is very good for our solution. And on the last slide, you see then that another project where we think also our solution can give a lot of benefits is, for example, for foundations of wind turbines. That's it. Last slide for me. So if my question is, what can we build for you? Please reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Thank you very much. And we'll see how many answer that question. Moving on to Spain now, where Stuart will introduce us with scaled robotics, applying robots and machine learning to build new tools that can track, analyze, and optimize the construction process. Stuart, please show up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. So, as introduced, I'm Stuart. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Scaled Robotics. We're based in Spain, but I think you can quite clearly hear that I am not Spanish. I was born in London, but the company is based in Barcelona. Scaled Robotics is automating progress monitoring and quality control for construction. Next slide. And we do that by comparing the BIM to the reality, which is normally a point cloud, comparing the two, automating the analysis between the two, and then trying to take something incredibly complex and try and make it as simple as possible by automating the analysis of every single element in the BIM. So we can immediately tell you what is verified, so it's within tolerance and has been built correctly, what is deviated, so it's been built outside of the tolerances that have been given to us by the client, and what is missing, which is, well, what is missing and has not been installed. All of this, I think, kind of looks fairly simple when you look at it in an animation, but the reality, if you click the next slide, is that construction is incredibly complex. We are trying to build 21st century buildings with 20th century tools, and we're trying to manage them with processes that we developed literally hundreds of years ago. And if you cannot measure a process, you cannot manage it, and if you don't objectively understand what is happening, you're never going to be able to improve or optimize that process. So I think what we can do is we'll just dive straight into what that actually looks like for one of our customers. So if you go to the next slide, you can see that all of the data is being represented in a web viewer. So I get access to all the information about my building in a platform that I can share. So I can have someone on site, but I could also have someone in their pajamas back home, also managing the project with the same information. I can filter by time. So I can look at previous moments in the construction history that I can then use as either a reference or just documentation. And then I can start to filter my elements. It started, if you saw that, started with 2,440 elements, but I know that there are issues on this project with the reservations, the blockouts for where the services need to go through the concrete. So I can filter them, and now I'm only looking at those reservations which are missing. I go to the list, I can start navigating through that list and start checking out every single reservation. Each element is automatically tagged with every single 360-degree image that it appears in. So I do not have to go searching for information. All of that is already organized and structured for you, so you can just get down to actually assessing the issue. And I can see in the image, because I've automatically highlighted where that element should be with the bounding box, and I can see very clearly that reservation very much does not exist on that concrete wall. So what I'm really trying to communicate there is that we're going from almost no information about this complex project to having within seconds a really clear-cut view of every single issue that is putting my site at risk, that I can quickly and clearly communicate to other members of my team to be able to actually fix, reduce uncertainty, and reduce risk on my construction project. And if you go to the last slide, that kind of works well for really like small, no, the slide before, that works. I think you might have to play it. Well, if the video is not playing, such is life. What I was trying to communicate in the next slide is that we're also producing a number of tools to be able to, there we go, just need to play it. So something incredibly complex, maybe for reservations is easier, but when you're looking at literally on some of the projects that we're working on, you're talking about tens of thousands of elements just in one class. How do you reduce that search space? So one of the things we can also do is filter by element type, but also the magnitude of deviation. So how deviated is that element? And then everything within this list is automatically ranked by that magnitude of deviation. So I have all the high risk, high deviation elements at the top, so I can prioritize them, and all the lower ones at the bottom. And then I can visualize those deviations using a heat map, again, making it super easy for the user to intuitively understand what's going on. You can see that white is within tolerance, red is negative material, blue is positive. So it's very quick and easy to understand that there is a big red hole in my wall, which is not probably what you were looking for. I can then check the image, and I can see very quickly that there is, in fact, in reality, a big hole in my wall that I did not expect. And I need to be able to communicate that to the subcontractor or to other members of my team. So we recognize that 3D is not always the language the industry uses, so we also automatically generate two-dimensional sections or 2D architectural drawings that we can also then use to communicate clearly in the language that everyone understands to get that issue fixed at no extra cost. And final slide, just a big thank you to everyone that's worked with us on this. Afgrippen, Dura Vermeer, Alec in Dubai, everyone that's helped us push this forward to the product that it is now. Yeah, a pleasure to have presented.
Thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you for the nice demo. Moving back to the UK, or from Stuart, the transition is good to the UK, where Jonathan will from Mott MacDonald Ventures, will summarize their investment thesis and their vision on digital construction.
Great, thanks a lot.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, thanks. So hi all, I'm John Hale. I'm an investor at Mott MacDonald Ventures, which is the venture arm of Mott MacDonald, one of the world's largest global engineering consultancies. Next slide. So myself and my team, we invest to enhance the design, delivery, management of the global built environment. So we invest across design, construction, and operations in the built environment, across the project life cycle. And that's kind of the theme of the presentation today from the investor perspective, but hopefully it'll be somewhat educational for startups too. So next slide. Yeah, I'd like to talk about digital tech, not just in construction, but specifically tech that spans across the project lifecycle. And first, I'll just quickly define what we think of as the project lifecycle in the next slide. So to simplify it down, we think of it when we're looking at technology as categorizing it into pre-design, so feasibility studies, design, which is your BIM, construction, which then integrates the supply chain with on-site activities, and then the important handover to the asset owner for the operation lifecycle to begin. And we're fortunate to see a lot of great companies operating in all of these phases. So we see generative design in pre-design, we see VR, AR, so you can collaborate in BIM during the design stage, robotics and construction to help augment workforces, and then increasingly we're seeing a lot of clean tech, especially in the operations phase. Next slide. But when we think about the big problems in constructions, it's not just what's going on in these phases, but going on across these phases, and principally with data silos and data mismanagement. So from pre-design to design, information is still flowing through as paper drawings. From design to construction, data is still siloed in different file formats, different software packages. Even in construction, data is still entered manually from the supply chain to contractors, so a lot of data gets lost. And then in that crucial handover phase, there's still a lot of analog documents, so information being handed over in PDFs, spreadsheets, and those get lost over that giant lifecycle stage. Next slide. And this is a big problem. A lot of you may have seen this FMI Plan Grid report that came out recently, but they found that 52% of total rework is actually due to poor data and communication issues across these project lifecycle phases. And that's a $300 billion opportunity. Problem/opportunity. They also found that 35% of a contractor's time is spent on non-optimal activities, and that would include finding data, fixing data, and uploading data manually. Next slide. So Mott MacDonald Ventures, what we're looking at right now is project management technology. It's not the sexiest term, but we think it's a technology stack that is having a bit of a resurgence, threatening the incumbents, and can potentially add a ton of value within the industry. So the holy grail would be to find a project management technology that can start at the pre-design stage and become that golden thread of information, connecting third-party data streams, connecting all stakeholders together all the way through to the operation and handover phase of the project lifecycle. Next slide. So this is kind of an investor's take on the landscape. So how do we think about investing? How are we trying to find opportunities in the area? And then if you're a startup in the space, you can use this next portion to think about how you can differentiate from incumbents. But what I did was try to do a landscape analysis. So we're trying to find the opportunity areas. And as you can see on the snapshot on the right, it started with, let's look at 50 companies, startups and incumbents in this space globally. And then we'll categorize them by product maturity. What use case are they targeting? Are they a platform or the product? Do they have AI enabled? What's their functionality? And then we can do some trend spotting to figure out what startups are truly differentiated and what features are now commoditized. So I'm just going to dig into 5 little areas. Next slide. So first off, and probably most important, is what use case are companies in the project technology space within AEC targeting? One caveat being most companies focus on multiple areas. So this was just looking at the primary value add that they're bringing. Keep in mind the count number, there were 50 total. I think to summarize from this, we found that any company that is just doing scheduling within construction is now relatively commoditized. Whereas at the other end of the spectrum, when we get into risk analysis, there are a few companies that have really cracked that egg. And that kind of ties into what people have been saying on this call with how complex projects are. It's tough to kind of get your head around it. But we found a few companies that are doing that. Next slide. One of the things we are trying to focus on as an investor is trying to find companies that are tying together threads of information across the phases. And we found that in this analysis, 60% of companies were really focused purely on the construction phase, and there's a ton of value to bring there, a lot of problems and a lot of opportunity. But what we are trying to focus on is the companies that are tying the information together from design through to construction and through operations. We think there's still a lot of opportunity there. I know 35% are focused on all in this analysis, but the caveat there is that might just be including companies that are focused on just design construction or just construction operations. Next slide. Third, we wanted to look at the maturity. Is this a space that is taken over by incumbents? Is there room for startups to operate? And what we found, if you're not familiar with TRL levels, just know that a TRL 9 really just means a very mature product. TRL 5s and 6s are the startups with pilots in progress or needing to develop that first use case. And what you can see is there's clearly a lot of incumbents in the space, like Autodesk, Oracle, Bentley. But we're increasingly seeing a wave of startups that have their pilot, are looking for the first use cases, and are looking to scale commercially. And we think that's 1 to 2 years out, we'll start to be able to take market share from the incumbents. Next slide. So the last 2 areas, the question we had was, well, there are obviously startups in the market. How can they really beat the incumbents that have been around for a very long time and have very deep pockets? The first thing we looked at was, well, how functional are these products? And you don't need to bother yourself too much with the scores and the details. But from this, we just want to take away that 67% of the companies we looked at, what they're really offering is data capture, data management, and data reporting, enhanced versions of these. And again, they add value, but they are becoming increasingly commoditized. To really differentiate from the market, we're now looking for companies that A, can offer predictive analytics. So that would be a company that can say, based on everything that's going on in the project, this is where you will end up. These are the risks you will come across. And then even more valuable, but even tougher to find, companies that are doing prescriptive analytics. So you need to do this to guarantee success, or you need to do this to avoid the risks. And so far, only 33% of companies we've come across are really offering those 2 levels of intelligence. Next slide. So if startups can differentiate on intelligence, we also think they can differentiate on how open they are and able to integrate with different data sources. And we've seen this from one of our portfolio companies, 3D Repo, very open company with API first driven principles. And I think that's how you can overtake Autodesk and Bentley at pace. So we found that only 44% of companies have a functioning API, most of them startups, and even in that range, some APIs are relatively closed, some are entirely open. One other differentiator was, are these companies BIM enabled? We would have thought a lot of companies are BIM enabled, but surprisingly, only 38% of companies we found had a good BIM integration. Next slide, just to sum it all up. So when we're mapping startups as what do we find to be the most investable? In the graph on the left, you could think of the vertical axis as that level of functionality. So how intelligent is the company? Is it providing a lot of AI and a lot of automation? On the horizontal axis, you could think of that as closed versus open. So is it a closed product offering one very specific tool, or is it an open platform that can bring all of that information from the project together across the phases? The size of the circles represent the maturity of each company. So for example, you can see on the left, there are a lot of small circles, which means there's a lot of startups that are particularly focused on building a product versus a platform. I think 2 things to take away from this one are that we find there's a huge opportunity area for a platform within construction that is also highly intelligent. So a platform that is open, but offers a lot of prescriptive analytics and predictive analytics. Of the 20 to 30 companies we're currently looking at in this space, project technology, only a handful are really trying to hit that zone. And secondly, as I just mentioned, we found that the platform space is far and wide taken over by the incumbents, which makes sense because they had deeper pockets and they've had a time to connect different products together to build a platform. But we see that changing. We do see the startups coming up with, well, starting off with a product, but given that open nature and the fact that most startups today are primarily API driven, they will be able to build those platforms quicker than the incumbents. So we're on the edge of our seats kind of waiting for that to happen. Next slide. And that's a really, really high level overview of the analysis. If anyone has any questions, always happy to chat. I know I kind of breezed through that. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Very nice to have you. My name is Thibault Le Séguillon, and I'm a partner at Impulse. and I'm going to try to sum up what we have heard and seen today. First, we heard from Aurélie and Nicolas from Bouygues UK. They share with us that they have put in place a massive program to transform their business called Digital. Bouygues UK use digital to increase their value proposition, to improve their operation, and to focus on users. They share with us a journey on 2 of the success stories with a focus on lesson learned. And one of them is it takes about 2 years for a large company like Bouygues to pilot or to prototype a new solution brought by a startup. Then we jumped to our startup part, and we started with Phil from Cloud Cycle, and he presented what they are concretely doing to reduce HS2, the largest building project in the UK right now, to reduce waste by huge amount. And they are doing that through applying circular economy principles. Basically, you put a smart device on your concrete truck and you develop the software behind it, and it gives you a lot of information which allow you to reduce waste. Then Guy from Litex show us how to bring 2D and 3D BIM modeling on site through the use of a laser and applied reality, including a feedback loop. We had Max from Rebartech presenting an off-site automated rebar prefabrication using software to optimize design, which save massively on material and labor. And last but not least, Stuart from Scale Robotics automate progress monitoring and quality control for construction sites, solving an incredibly complex problem with an incredible smart software and a very elegant user interface. Then John, from Mott MacDonald, talk about digital tech across the project lifecycle. They are looking at project management technology. They are looking exactly at open platform, including API and BIM, and using AI and automation. I would like to thank all of them, next please, for their participation today. We were delighted to have them during our webinar, and we should have a few minutes for question and answers after. Next please. The Impulse Talks, a digital and low carbon future series of webinars is going to continue through the next months. We'll have November and December about smart city and industry. And then in 2021, we'll come back on digital construction, smart city and industry 4.0. Next. Thank you again for our partners for these events who help us distribute the invitation. Next. Our next Impulse Talk will take place on Thursday, November 12th at 3 p.m. Paris. And we would like to next to ask you for your feedback. Please go online and fill out this form. It will be wonderful to learn what we can do better to serve your needs. Next, please. And now I will open the floor either through your mic or through the chat for questions to our speakers and startups. Is there any question today?
Hi, everybody.
Yes.
I have a little question.
Go ahead, Guy.
Hi, Thibaut. And
hi.
I have. Thank you for the great program. It was really interesting going throughout all those solutions. I have a little question for Phil. I think, if I remember well, on the Cloud Cycle solution.
Phil, correct.
My question was to me very simple. I think it's not about the technical part, but only on the device itself. Does it mean that if we work with your guys' solution, we need to work with a concrete company you chose on your presentation, a Cemex trucks, for example? Do we need to work with the companies that knows how to handle this device, or is that kind of cases seen already, or what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, no, so we're piloting at the moment, and Cemex and London Concrete, which is Lafarge Holcim, are our first pilot customers. They're also working with HS2, so we're working with HS2. But our equipment is very easy retrofitted on any concrete truck in about 2 or 3 hours. And obviously we absorb the cost for that, and it's low cost for, well, it's zero cost for whoever would like to implement it. But we're in pilot stage at the moment, so if you would like to speak with us, we'd happily, have a conversation with who your current concrete suppliers are, because we do, we want to work with all of the big boys out there as well as the smaller regional players, because we believe that it's a regional solution, and it's quite refreshing to see that Cemex know that we're working with London Concrete. They're the biggest rivals, but they're happy to work with us together because they know it's a better solution for industry. So happy to talk to you about the suppliers you're working with and the projects you're working on, and see how we could help out.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Philip, for the answer. And now I see the time. I would like to close this session and to thank you all for your attention. We'll come back on the 12th of November with a webinar on Smart City. Thank you. See you soon.